What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ruben, and we're just going to dive right into it. The problem with Trevor Lawrence. I know a lot of you guys have either billed him the prince that was promised, like Nick Wright, and some of you guys have made it fashionable to think he's a bust. If you've been following me long enough, then you would know how I feel about Trevor Lawrence, and I'm kind of somewhere in the middle because I don't think he's a bust. I think at the minimum, his floor is a solid to good quarterback. Okay, he's not going to be a guy that I even though I know he's cost us some games now, but I don't think he's going to be a detriment to the team. I don't think he'll ever reach bust level. I guess it depends on how you look at it. If you want to say he's number one overall and we just got a solid quarterback, that's a bust. I guess it's tomato, tomato. It's your perspective. But I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to hold us back as long as we keep building the team, which I do like the way we're being built. So a lot of the stuff, though, because some people seem to be surprised, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing shouldn't surprise you because if you actually, I know a lot of people don't have a tendency to not really watch and analyze, or maybe they just don't have the ability to see something and then extrapolate it and focus it into another arena. So for instance, right, you got Trevor Lawrence, who was in college, and why I stated I was never in love with Trevor Lawrence when we drafted him. If you go back to his first year when he played, they won the championship. They beat Alabama, right? And a lot of people jumped on the hype train. Man, this kid's 6'6", the blonde locks. He just beat Nick Saban in the Crimson Tide, one of the best schools ever. If you go back and look at that game, though, that was one of Alabama's worst defenses. Okay, they weren't a very good defense, and I thought he got a lot of buzz. And then going into that playoff, they had training wheels on Trevor Lawrence. Like there was a lot of 200-yard games, even sub 200-yard games that he played in where it's not like he was throwing it all over the field. He had a nice little run in the playoffs, and then he beat Nick Saban, from which I think was kind of a subpar Alabama defense that year. But nonetheless, everybody was salivating because, at that point, hey, he's a champion. He beat Nick Saban. He's got the tangibles. 6'6", throws a pretty ball. And for all intents and purposes is an athletic kid. Okay. But then fast forward, right? He did well. Okay. But if you remember the next season, they played LSU and got destroyed. But it wasn't, but Ruben, that's LSU. That was arguably one of college football's greatest teams that we've ever seen. You had Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Derek Stingley, like Christian Fulton. There was so many NFL players on that team. True. And I keep telling people this. There were a lot of NFL football players on Clemson. Now, not like LSU, and I didn't expect Clemson to beat LSU. So I don't knock Trevor Lawrence for not winning that game, although it would have gave him great points and God knows what we would have thought of him then, right? But I believe he had a sub 60% completion percentage in that game. I do fault him for not looking good. Okay, he didn't look at all like a number one overall pick in that game. And if you watch that game, when the heat's on him, his accuracy really comes and goes. So it's not surprising that now you see that his accuracy comes and goes when the heat's on him. Okay. And he had some bad habits that he didn't necessarily have to kick because Clemson ran a very simple scheme. I wouldn't say they ran a very NFL pro-ready type of offense. They did run RPOs, and not to mention Clemson in the ACC was able to. There was no competition for him, so he never really had to work on his game. And I'm not saying that he never did because he's still very good. I do think he was worthy of the number one overall pick. I just don't think he was the generational talent. People fall in love again. 6'6", and that's all people hear, right? 6'6", NCAA champion, and that's all people want to hear. But the bigger the game, the more disappointed I became in Trevor Lawrence. They failed. I do know that Clemson did fail him as a team when they lost to Justin Fields. and the Ohio State Buckeyes that last year, right? So my problem is now is when the game's on the line, I don't feel like I see Trevor Lawrence raise his game and raise his teammates. Okay. Now, again, when they played Ohio State, I think Ohio State was a better team. When they played LSU, I think LSU was the better team. But I never felt like, you know what, Trevor Lawrence might pull this out. So now he's the quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we had an opportunity against Philly to win that game. He had maybe not win that. I believe we had an opportunity to tie the game on the last drive, and he fumbled. Okay. Has any of you guys ever gotten the feeling that, you know what, he's capable of bringing us down and winning the game on a final drive or tying the game? Like, when you got to have it. Do you guys get that feeling like, I believe he can get it done? Because I don't. And that's always been there for Trevor Lawrence. I think part of his problem is some of the things you guys like are some of the things that work against him. He's 6'6", which makes him extremely long. And he's a very long, gangly 6'6". He's not overly thick. He's kind of a skinny kid, actually, for his height, right? Not to the point that it's a detriment, but my point is that his steps are longer than your average quarterback, which means it affects his mechanics when there's pressure on him more than most quarterbacks, because he's so long and it takes so much of a windup to throw the ball for him. Now, his mechanics aren't atrocious, but they weren't the greatest coming in. And as a result, that's why his accuracy comes and goes. Now, I heard in the offseason he was working on that. And I love the fact that we brought in Doug Peterson and Mike McCoy and Jim Bob Cooter to really work with him. And I heard he had been working on its mechanics. And you saw early on, we saw a lot of promise early on. And then we also realized that we don't have the O-line to kind of give him the time he needs. But the problem with that is who has that O-line? Like, not everybody has Patrick Mahomes' O-line. That had to be built. Tom Brady didn't always have the greatest O-line, but he understood how to maneuver, slide around in the pocket, and trust the check down. So ultimately, he has too much, I got to see it open before I throw it. He's not anticipating enough, which this coaching staff, I think, will help get right. And also, when the pressure's on, he defaults back to his bad habits, which is the bad mechanics, which is affecting his accuracy. It's also affecting why I love Joe Burrow is because he doesn't have the biggest arm or throw the prettiest ball, right? He just gets shit done. He has a plan when he comes to the line. He knows what you're trying to do to him. I don't get that sense with Trevor Lawrence, which I wonder what they're doing in the film room, which, being that we have an offensive-minded kind of coach, I think these are, again, things that can be fixed. But it feels like when things aren't going Trevor Lawrence's way, he resorts to bad habits, the bad mechanics, and the one read. Back at Clemson, it was a lot of RPO. It was read the defensive lineman, hand it off, or you have the ability to run or toss it to T. Higgins. He didn't do a lot of first read, second read, third read, check down. And there's more to it than just that. Why is that guy your first read, right? Because your first read isn't always just because the coach said this is your first read. Sometimes you need to know, is this cover two? Is this man? Is this cover two man? Right? And why do you need to know that? Because, so for instance, if this guy originally was your first read, but there's a corner there and you identify that's cover two, and then there's a safety over the top, and you identify, okay, they're in full-on cover two man, or zone, then you need to know that you have to wait for that guy to hit the honey hole. So that might not be your first read. Your first read needs to be, here's the mic, and you decide, what's going on from that point, because your O-line has to know where to block and you have to know where the hole is going to be. In a cover two, full-on cover two zone, the honey hole is between the safety and the corner and deep post towards the middle. But you have to read the safeties to do that. So, for instance, if you have two safety high and one safety comes down and that free safety comes towards the middle, then your first read might be to the left. And you have to know where your check down is on top of that. So if your first read is to the left, then it's 1, 2, 3. Do you see what I'm saying, guys? And that's something that I see Clemson is struggling with. And I didn't want to get too technical with you guys because I don't have the graphic up so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And that's something I want to work on for future videos. And stick with your boy. I'm going to definitely make sure I get you guys more informed videos so you can follow me better. But long story short, Trevor Lawrence isn't broken. He's got some things he needs to work on. I think we know what those things are. Now, can it all come together in time before the city gets down on him? Before his teammates get down on him? That's what happens to a lot of quarterbacks. Everybody likes this big 6'6" kid, but he's not Josh Allen. He's not that big. He's not shrugging guys off. We'll see what happens, guys. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a good quarterback. If we continue to build around him, I think we have just enough weapons. But you know what's going to help him immensely, obviously, getting him a true number one wide receiver. I don't know how that's going to happen, where it's going to happen. We're probably going to have to draft it because it's really hard to get certain players to come to Jacksonville. We're just not a free agent destination. We're going to have to look at the trade market. A la Buffalo went out and got Stephon Diggs, but you know what? Buffalo originally wasn't a trade destination. Remember that? AB spurned them. Remember that? They had to go out and trade for Stephon Diggs, and then Josh Allen progressed, and now look at him. I really think the Jacksonville Jaguars can do something like that. I really like what we're building on defense. I really like, while we don't have a number one, some of the smaller pieces that we put around Trevor Lawrence. Christian Kirk's a really good receiver. Marvin Jones is a really good receiver. We got some speed around him. We got running backs. We got a good right guard. Maybe next year we get a left guard. These are things, we're moving in the right direction, guys. This season's not over. Don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. I believe Trevor Lawrence is good enough to get us where we need to go. And this is essentially his rookie season, okay? For all I've said about Trevor Lawrence, these are things that he has a bag that most busts don't have. The question was never, for me, will he be a bust? It was, will he be the generational Peyton Manning, Tom Brady type quarterback? Excuse me. Stumbling over my words there. Sorry, guys. Will he be that quarterback? Is he going to be a face of the league type of quarterback? I don't know about that one, guys. But would you take a Ben Roethlisberger? Would you take Drew Brees? See what I'm saying? I would. And I think we're building a really good team around them. So hopefully it happens faster, sooner rather than later, because you definitely want to take advantage of the fact that he's on a rookie contract and we, continue to build around him during that time and take advantage of it. But we'll see. All right. Let me know what y'all think. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and definitely check your boy out on the next one. Peace.